I've said it before and I'll keep saying it. Oklahoma is a great state, but we deserve better. And nowhere is this clearer than in education. We rank near the bottom in reading outcomes. That's not just a statistic. It's a crisis. And it's one that we can solve with the right leadership, the right priorities, and by listening to people who are doing the work every day in our schools. That's what this episode is about. Real solutions from real educators. Let's get to it.
This podcast is authorized and paid for by Friends of Gentner Drummond 2026.
Welcome back to Bold Ideas with Gentner Drummond, where we dive into the conversation shaping Oklahoma's future. Today, we're talking education, and specifically what it's going to take to improve reading outcomes and classroom instruction across our public schools. Our guest is Cheryl Wilkinson, Executive Director of Teaching and Learning for Bixby Public Schools. With 20 years in education and deep experience as a special education teacher, reading specialist, and instructional coach, Cheryl brings both the passion and expertise to the table. In her current role, she leads professional development for the entire district, supports instructional coaches, and ensures teachers have access to the tools they need to succeed. Her focus on literacy and instructional quality makes her a leading voice on how we help both teachers and students thrive. We're thrilled to have her on the show today to talk about early reading, teacher support, and what bold ideas could move Oklahoma education forward. Let's get started. Cheryl, welcome. And Gentner, you have said repeatedly on the campaign trail that you want to support public education, not dismantle it. So question for both of you to get things kicked off here for this discussion. Oklahoma is ranked 50th in the nation in education. Does the system need to be dismantled, or are there things that we can do, clear areas of improvement that can move the needle quickly and raise our rankings?
Cheryl, I'm so happy you're here. Thank you for joining us, and I'm eager to hear your feedback on all of these issues. I think that you and I would agree we have a remarkable, dedicated teacher corps in the state of Oklahoma. We have talented administrators, devoted school board members. We have parents who are engaged. We have everything we need. We have the raw material. We have the great people. We just need leadership and we need direction. And I'm just curious how you would attack that.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. And being a teacher, it is a servant leadership role. It's a sacrifice for some. The teachers I know are dedicated, intelligent, highly qualified professionals who could apply that skill set in other industries, and yet they choose teaching because it is such a worthy endeavor. And yet if it's a negative impression in our culture, in our climate, to be a teacher, it makes it harder to make that sacrifice to say, I'm going to go do this really noble work. And so if we can just flip even the narrative to say, this is an amazing profession. It's worthwhile. And we have worthwhile educators giving everything they have to the students and their communities. I think even changing that is going to change how educators feel facing their jobs every day. As you know, we're in the middle of a teacher shortage as well. And the work they do is so complex. And it's not, we can't just take anyone and put them in a classroom and expect high yield results and outcomes. This is really, really important work. It takes very critical skills to be able to do it successfully. And so therefore, yes, recruiting and retaining high quality teachers has to be number one.
I didn't have that empathy as a young professional, but I can, after about 20 years of Bible study with my children as their teacher, I've oftentimes thought, oh my goodness, I'm doing this with 10 children. How does a teacher in our public school system do it with 20, 25, 30? So it is remarkable. And I appreciate your position. When we were younger, the teachers were elevated and honored and respected.
True.
I think I can speak for virtually every adult. Aside from our parents, grandparents, maybe our faith leaders, nobody's had a greater impact on us than our teachers. I know the names of every one of my elementary teachers. I love them. They've just been so impactful in my life. And what I've observed just in recent years, this narrative that teachers are the enemy, they're not worthy, they're not, that's false on its face. As you mentioned, they're public servants.
Yeah.
And the teachers that I'm aware of could do any number of things outside of the classroom and make more money.
For sure.
And yet they do this because they love our children.
That's true. And I would welcome anyone into our schools. Come and see. I mean, it's beautiful. Our teachers are teaching, our students are learning. it's a beautiful place to be.
Talk to our listeners about why is it that Bixby can be performing in the top 10% of the state?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think we have a great team. We've had great leadership historically and currently that certainly contributes to that. We attract families into our community that then support our schools. And so having that family support, having community support is critical. And so we are able to recruit teachers into our schools. Unfortunately, right now, we don't have a pipeline of teachers coming through the teacher education programs. And so we're almost stealing from each other, from other school districts, which feels, I don't know, it feels icky in some ways. We want to recruit those teachers and by providing, even if the narrative outside our four walls of our district is negative, if we create this really nurturing, wonderful place to come and work where everyone wants to come day in and day out, then we're going to do that. And we're going to build up our teachers. We're going to support them. We're going to make sure they have the supplies they need. We're going to make sure they have the training they need. We're going to make sure our class sizes are within reason and support our teachers and celebrate them for the professionals that they are and for the work that they're doing.
Now, Bixby is a robust suburb, right? It's got a great tax base, great population base. Visit with us about how, is it the same in an urban setting? And juxtapose that maybe with the true rural settings in education?
That's a great question, and one that I don't know that I could offer expertise on because my entire teaching career has been in Bixby Public Schools. And so we are well supported by bond issues. And so we are able to keep our facilities up to date and by technology. And I think there are things we are able to support because of the community I live in that may not be the same in other settings. And yet I know there are other districts, they receive different federal funding. And this is an area I'm not an expert in on school finance, but every dollar that comes in is designated for specific uses and we earn them for specific reasons. And so if you have a populace that is economically disadvantaged and you earn more Title I funding, then you have opportunities to do more there, but which we do not earn as much in Title I funding, but we have a well-supported bond that goes to different things. And so, yes, school finance is complicated, and yet I think all of those things pouring into schools is what makes the difference in what opportunities we can offer our students.
You mentioned the pipeline. I mean, we have a diminished pipeline. I think that we've had a full 2.5 to 3 years of negativism toward our teachers, and it's steered a lot of our young professionals away from this profession. What can we do to attract young people into this profession?
Right. Well, and let me just say, we've just finished our new teacher training and onboarding for the summer, and to see these fresh-faced new teachers coming into the profession excited, they're still there, and it's so exciting to support them as they launch into their careers. So they're there. We need more of them, obviously. So I think it's what I mentioned earlier. We need to offer a place to work that is wonderful to go to day in, day out, that they know they're going to get everything they need to do their jobs and to do them well. And as long as we support them and we're not negative, tearing down the work that they do or minimizing the work they do and say anyone can do this, which they can't. It's a true art. There's a true art to teaching. And so I think continuing to build a positive culture around the field of education will work wonders.
I think there's so many things that we can do as a state to provide opportunities for mentorship. I can imagine that you, with your skill, you could take a young teacher and
for sure
help her or him learn lessons that you had to learn the hard way.
For sure.
So the mentorship is there, supporting our school boards, giving them more opportunities and availability. And I'm curious to hear your reaction to the emergency certified teachers. Do they, and I know, and I appreciate them.
Oh, for sure.
But is there a difference between an emergency certified teacher and a fully certified teacher?
Well, regardless of your background, the first time you enter a classroom as a teacher is a learning curve. There is so much you have to learn, boots on the ground, once you get into the classroom. And yet, definitely, if you're coming in with the pedagogy and the knowledge of how to instruct, you have a toolbox full of tools for actual teaching, that you're definitely better equipped to face all of the challenges inside of a classroom. When you come in and you don't know how to write a lesson plan, or you don't you don't even have the instructional strategy of how to begin a lesson, how to access background knowledge, you may have a strong content knowledge base, but then knowing how to convey that information to others, that is really, really challenging work. And then to be able to analyze the level of mastery your students are at and where to intervene and how to reteach in a way that they're going to be successful. There are so many steps along the way. I am very thankful we do have a strong instructional coaching team in Bixby, and that is how we support our newly trained teachers or emergency certified teachers in the classroom. We have these experts, these true mentors who can come alongside them and walk them through, but they are spread very thin. We have 6 in our entire district. And then you look across the state and not everyone even has the opportunity to have instructional coaches in their schools.
Sounds like it's both an art and a science.
It truly is. It truly is. Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about reading proficiency. What does Bixby do? What's the secret sauce to get reading proficiency?
I'm so excited to talk about this. I read a book. Stay with me for a second. I read a book early in my career that really shaped my thinking. It was called Annual Growth versus Catch-Up Growth. And it talks about how when students enter into our schools, we expect our teachers to grow them 1 year of academic growth in 1 year of time. That's reasonable. That's what we expect. But we have students that enter our schools every year, but let's just even take kindergarten. The first time we're having the opportunity to teach them, you can have 2 students enter our school building. Student A, who maybe has been read to every day and has been exposed to a high quantity of vocabulary, and you play word games with cereal boxes in the grocery store, and you see a stop sign and you stop and look at the letters, and you have families that have really used environmental print to expose kids to have a literacy-rich environment growing up. And then you have student B, who comes in loved and taken care of and ready for your first day of school with your new backpack on, but maybe has not been exposed to vocabulary and letters and everything that is pre-reading, all of our pre-reading skills. And from day one as a school, we could have as much as a 4-year gap between skills and students as they start school. So student A may be 2 years ahead and student B may be 2 years behind. And we're not even talking about students from trauma or neglect or students with learning disabilities or developmental delays. These are just the trajectory of students entering kindergarten. And if we only make 1 year of academic growth in 1 year's time with both of those students every year, we're never going to close the gaps. So we are always going to be facing gaps. So we have to be very, very intentional about assessment, finding gaps and filling gaps, and making sure that we're looking to make at least 1.5 years worth of growth in 1 year's time for students who are showing delays and gaps. And all of that takes systematic processes and procedures for looking at data and looking at what instructional strategies we're using with students on the front end, and then what you're doing to reteach on the back end for students that are not getting it that first time around. The acquisition of most skills, but literacy specifically, is developmental. So if we don't go back and fill the gaps, they're never going to proceed. We're just going to extend that gap.
So you make an interesting point of that entering kindergarten student. And I'm thinking of student A, who's in that more learning environment, the exposure. But student B, maybe both parents work, maybe it's not an opportunity. I'm curious if we as a state should focus on equalizing that pre-kindergarten with early childhood opportunities for student B.
Yes, I think that's great. And we have, a library system, and we have access to text. And honestly, it can be as simple as the knowledge as a parent, just knowing how critically important it is to read 20 minutes a day, to go get a book at the library and read together and say, oh my goodness, what's going to happen next? As you read the book, it doesn't take a teacher. You don't have to have the skills of a teacher. Just truly the time and text and that exposure is so critical. So it's about early intervention and awareness of how important it is to just be rich in text and from the very earliest of days.
So in our school districts that have more adverse impact on their children, and not the Bixby model, but maybe the interurban communities, is there something that we can do structurally as a state to empower the school districts to provide more resources, maybe a teacher's aide in each classroom or a reading czar or a reading teacher dedicated to the classroom? Would that be helpful?
I definitely think that's helpful. I think we have a national framework called MTSS. It stands for a multi-tiered system of supports. And that's something that many schools in Oklahoma already align themselves to. But I think more support in education in MTSS is the answer, because what that is having someone to drive the process of being able to evaluate all of your students and know exactly where they are, where are the gaps, how do we fill the gaps, how do we know the gaps are filled, and how do we move that student forward successfully. Just being a classroom teacher, that's a lot. That's a lot to do on your own. You have to have someone driving the process. So I can help drive that process in my district, but we would need in every district someone with the knowledge and the ability to support teachers who are like, this isn't working. It worked with all of my other kids, but this student still has this gap and this gap and this gap. How do I meet all of these needs? We're asking teachers not only you have 25 students, we want them to be safe and well cared for in this classroom, and we need good classroom management, and students are following expectations and good behavior, but then we also need them to learn at a high level. I mean, we're asking a lot of that classroom teacher, so having specialists and having someone to walk alongside teachers, not to say you're doing this wrong and you're doing this, you need to do it this way instead, but to walk alongside and truly coach teachers on, here's something you can try. Let's do it together. I can model it. I'll come into your classroom. I'll do that with you. And then I'll scaffold myself out. And now you have new tools to try with the next student that tries this. It's just, it's an approach that will work. It is a science. It's formulaic almost, where if you do this, it will work and students will grow and students will learn. But we need someone in these school districts to drive the process.
You touched on a subject that kind of piques my interest. I learned to read through phonics.
Yes.
That was the fundamentals. And I've read some material that maybe there was the 3 cueing philosophy for a little while. Did that have an adverse effect on the teaching, the reading competency of our young people?
I would say the trajectory of teaching reading has gone through this paradigm shift, kind of a curve of back and forth. And when I was getting my master's in reading, which was like the early 2000s, the early 2000s-ish, it was more of a balanced approach, teaching phonics, but then also teaching using semantics and logic. Like, does that make sense? Like, so the 3 cueing system is about, if you don't know a word, can you use context clues and pictures to kind of figure it out, what that word means, and move on. Whereas the science of reading says we really need to make sure students have all the tools they need to be able to decode and break down a word to make sure they know what that word is before moving on. And then they can apply it then to new patterns and new words along the way. So in my teaching career, I would say that has not had an adverse effect, to answer your question. And we've been teaching the science of reading the entire time I've been in the classroom. And so it's not new. It's not something that's new. It's something that we've been doing the whole time. And so I think it's good that we're aware of all of these multiple components that make up good literacy instruction. And it is, you have phonological awareness, which is the oral side of learning to read, phonics, which is then applying that sound symbol relationship, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. You work all of those things together to then unlock the code of reading. I can't remember. There is a percentage of us that our brains are not made for reading. And it's a huge percentage of us. And we have to unlock that code for students and then once it snaps, it goes into place, and you continue to offer the instruction in a very logical sequence. And as you do that, students, they will learn to read. I believe with every single person can read. I know we can make that happen. It's just we have to have the tools in order to make it happen.
How does it feel as a teacher when you see that epiphany, that student click into?
Yes. There's nothing better. There's nothing better when you see that snap in the place.
So I'm curious, when we do socially promote, the first grader goes to the second grade, the second grader goes the third. Is that misplaced? Should we send the third grader into fourth grade if that student can't read?
I'm a big believer in what I've seen to be true is that to hold students back based on academics is so socially negative, and then you're overcoming so much. From what I've understood and from what I've seen is better to socially promote and then support students where they are. When I talked about that year and a half of growth that we need to make to close the gap. So if I'm teaching third grade and I have a student reading on a first grade level, my goal is by the time they leave my classroom to be at a 2.5. And I'm going to promote to fourth grade now at a 2.5. But then if that fourth grade teacher can get us to a fourth grade level by the end of fourth grade, and then by the end of fifth grade. So if we can whittle that gap down, we're not going to all meet the same arbitrary line at the same time because we're all starting at different places. However, I think if we can systematically close the gaps year by year, we will still get there in the end.
How impactful would after-school learning have on students that are behind?
That's a good question. I think any kind of one-on-one small group support we can offer students, the better. So if that happens we work it into our school day, both in small group instruction with a classroom teacher, but then also during a targeted intervention time where we move students around based on what their specific needs are. And then they go to specific classes to meet that need in a smaller group type setting. So I think that that's critically important. And if you can offer that after school, then I think, yeah, that's a win. But honestly, this answer is so simple. It's true exposure to text. It's more time in text, reading more volume of reading outside of school is going to get us so much further down the line.
I'm curious also, you mentioned that, and I'm thinking after school, end of day, child's tired.
Sure.
Where would you ideally place the reading time, the reading instruction in the child's day?
It's a great question. It actually happens all day. And so in our literacy blocks in our younger grades are anywhere from 120 to 180 minutes. I mean, that's up to half the day is reading. So it's not all in one chunk. That is divided out throughout the day. So you have handwriting and you have writing and you have that phonological awareness piece and you have phonics and vocabulary and then your reading lesson and your comprehension lesson. And you have your small groups and your literacy centers. I could go on and on of all the different components that make up our literacy time of instruction, but you have to break that up all throughout the day. So
it's exhausting.
It is. I will say it probably 100 times. It is complex work. It is.
It sounds it, and I really hope our listeners can grasp, the complexity that the teacher has. Yeah. I mean, my heart goes out to our teaching professionals. Both of my grandparents were teachers. My mother was a trained teacher. It's just hardwired into your profession, and I deeply respect and elevate and I mean it with all sincerity. We need to elevate the teacher. You are a remarkable component of our community. You have the impact. We know from experience, the impact that the teacher has on the child lasts a lifetime.
It's true. And just the overarching, the noble pursuit of educating our populace, it is critical for just strong infrastructure and economy. It makes good economic sense for us to pour into our schools and make sure that we're educating our people. And our teachers, they truly are. I could talk all day about our educators. I am in awe of them, and that's why it's such a privilege that I get to dedicate my time serving them and making sure they have everything they need for their classrooms. The work they do is so immense. And it is a calling. I think it truly is. And these are the best people I know are educators, and it's because they want to live their lives in service of the communities in which they work. So
I want to be part of that solution with you. I think it's so important for our economy and for our state to attract businesses, to have the competency and the reputation. I mean, does Oklahoma have to stay at 50th? Can we get out of that hole?
Well, we've been out of that hole. It's not like we've always been at the bottom. This has been a recent development that we've continued to plummet. And I think we just made the idea of entering the profession of teaching not very appealing. And even the teachers we're growing, they're going to surrounding states because they're whether it's salary or their schools are better funded, so they have better resources or better support, whatever it is, we're not recruiting and we're not retaining our teachers, the high quality teachers that we need to in the state.
I have visited with many teachers that are at the end of their career that could extend 3 to 5 years. Mm-hmm. They're choosing not to. And what I hear from them is, I am no longer respected and valued by the state of Oklahoma, and I am out. And that breaks my heart. We cannot do that. We need to retain those teachers in the classroom so that they can be the mentors and be the examples.
Yes. You can't replace that experience. We talked about it doesn't matter really where your training comes from. That first year is hard. It's hard work to be a teacher. But the more you're there, that you learn all the nuances of delivering content in a way that is really, really powerful. So we can't afford to lose teachers and all of that experience. We have to just create spaces that people want to stay in, that they want to continue working, they want to continue teaching. And yeah, our educators deserve to be celebrated.
One thing that Gentner's talked a lot about on the campaign trail, and studies have shown that if kids are not reading on level by third grade, their chance of success goes down because they're learning to read instead of reading to learn. So talking about the adverse effects of not socially promoting, maybe you don't have the answers to this because you're in Bixby where things are going well, but where students are falling behind and not reading on level by third grade, how many reading coaches do we really need? And how do we best collaborate between the local school district, the state, and the families to make sure these children can read by the third grade?
Right. Well, I think it's a noble goal to say all students will be reading on level by the end of third grade. That is certainly a target. We definitely want that number. The problem with saying it's happening, we've done this in our state before, every student will be on level by the end of third grade. The problem with that is that adversely affects teachers to say, well, I'm going to throw them into third grade content, whether they're ready for it or not. I have to get them on third grade content. So I'm going to spend all my time teaching them third grade, reading skills, math skills, all of the things so that we can. But if we have those gaps and delays that are present for that student, we're not filling them and we're just creating larger gaps. So I'm reluctant to say the answer is saying you have to be at this mark at this time. Instead, to say we want to see this much growth out of each of these students this year, and equipping teachers with being able to identify what's hanging up for the student. What's the hang up? Where's the learning gap happening? And how can I fill that gap? I do think literacy coaches, learning coaches, instructional coaches, we call them all different things. That's critical for teachers to have partners, think partners, to say, what should I try? I don't know how many it will take to make that happen, to have equity and access across all of our schools in Oklahoma. But I'm fearful of saying we're going to get all students to this one mark at this one time, just because it changes the perspective of the teacher then to stop looking for gaps in growth, instead to say, we have to get you right here. Right.
What I hear you saying is it's a much more complex discussion than a policymaker just simply waving a wand and saying, you shall read at third grade level at third grade. And what, from your earlier comments, I'm informed that it really begins at kindergarten.
Oh, for sure.
In a very concentrated, concerted effort to assess that child and meet those needs so that child can develop and at some point find parity among his or her classmates.
Yes.
You've mentioned a lot about the importance of parents reading to their children from the time they're babies, right? And one thing that Gentner's talked about on the campaign trail is developing the governor's reading corps and really just encouraging leaders in politics, leaders in churches, leaders in business to get out and read and promote literacy. Do you believe that is the number one most helpful thing that parents can do to help their children? 100%.
It is the answer. And it doesn't take a lot. That's what I mentioned earlier. It can truly be 20 minutes a day. That's the target. We always say 20 minutes a day of time and text with your kids. And if it's a struggling reader, it's I'm reading to you, or it's I read a page, you read a page. And it's talking about the text. Like, what do you think is going to happen next? Who's your favorite character and why? It's asking those really small questions that get students thinking about what they're reading. It's not hopefully not a huge time investment for families. And the gains we will get from that it's astronomical. It makes a huge difference.
I make it a practice when I go into a community throughout Oklahoma, if it's not an awkward time for the school, to ask the local elementary if I could drop by, and maybe every time I do it, then I want to be in a classroom and I want to read. And it's just so exciting for me. It just charges me up to be in that classroom with these young people, whether they're kindergartners or first or second, third graders, just the enthusiasm of having the guests, that 2, being able to honor the teacher in front of them, and then 3, to sit with them on the floor. coat jacket off, shirt sleeves up, reading that book and watching the enthusiasm and the engagement of the children with that guest reader. And I really want to provide an example of state leaders and municipal and county leaders to do that, to elevate the importance of reading, not just to the child, but also to illustrate it to the school district and the teachers that we and the policy chairs of Oklahoma care.
Thank you so much. That means so much. And we're the same way. Leaders in our districts, we make it a point to get into classrooms, to sit on the floor, say, bring me some kids. We need to remember and to stay close to the classroom so that we know the work we're doing and how it affects the classrooms. And to be able to truly know that impact, you have to get into classrooms to see it. So no, thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Absolutely. Cheryl, if you were in charge of education throughout the state for a day, what things would you change to make greater impact in our schools and the art of reading, the science of reading, to make that impact?
Well, I think first of all, I would want to encourage our teachers who are already on the front line working with students, and make sure that they are affirmed at the things that they're doing well, and then make sure that we're providing tools and training for the things that they need more support in. I am a firm believer that by having a process in place to know how to assess students and be able to provide effective intervention for students who are not thriving or moving forward with reading, and every teacher wants to feel well equipped to do a good job for his or her students. And so by equipping teachers and by providing them that deep toolbox of strategies that they can pull from, they're going to feel more and more confident and competent to meet the needs of their students. And that's what they want. And that's what I would want for them.
Well, I just want to thank you both. I mean, thank you, General Drummond, for making this a priority on the campaign trail. It's a little bit with a young child in elementary school. I want to see the state thrive. And I know that's why you're running. And Cheryl, thank you for dedicating your life to making kids' lives better and just pouring into it. It's a special gifting that you all have, and we greatly appreciate all the work that you do. And thanks for taking the time to answer these questions with us today.
I look forward to working with you on a more granular basis.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like more of this content, please hit subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Visit drummondok.com to learn more, get links to past episodes, and get involved with our campaign.
This podcast is authorized and paid for by Friends of Gentner Drummond 2026.